Joel, I actually find the rules of golf really quite confusing and a bit boring, to be honest.
Yeah, they are quite complicated actually, aren't they? I mean, is there anything that you change about them?
I've got a few ideas, actually.
Have you? I've got a few ideas as well.
Should we talk about them?
Yeah, let's do it. Right, so to kick us off, I think this is probably the most obvious rule that most golfers want to change, Dan. It's having relief from a ball in a divot.
100%. If you asked 1,000 golfers now, what rule would you want to see changed tomorrow? I think 999 would say, I want relief from divots in the fairway. We'll come on to that in a second. But, you know, I've hit a perfect drive down here, got a flick with a wedge in. I've got to play it out of this putrid divot here that someone's had a right hack at in a previous life. So, yeah, simple as that, right, Joel? Are you in agreement with me here?
I'm not in agreement. I'm the
one
one out of 1,000 that don't agree you should get relief from the divot. I think there's far too many grey areas here. Obviously, you can see your ball is obviously in a divot, but there'll be other situations where you've got old divots where they've been mostly kind of recovered, but there's still a slight indentation. You know, you could argue that pretty much everywhere on the fairway there's been a divot at some point. So how do you categorise a different age of divot? You know, if you've got a bad lie in the fairway, it doesn't look like a divot. Could you claim there's a divot? I think there's just too many grey areas for you to actually define what a divot is and therefore apply consistent ruling.
So you think it'd be too much of a slippery slope if this actually came into effect?
Yeah, and you could argue that obviously it's unfair that you get relief from animal holes, rabbit scrapings, that sort of thing. You get free relief from those,
right.
So why not just extend it to a divot? But for me personally, I just think it's too messy. I think it would slow down play as well. I think there'll be an awful lot of players calling over their playing partners, can you check if this is a divot, is it not a divot? You know, what is it? Is it just a bad lie in the fairway? And then, you know, what happens if you get in a divot in the rough or the semi-rough?
I agree with that. Is a bit of a muddy area, even I think people who want this rule to come into place.
Especially if it's not clear if you're quite in the fairway or not.
Yeah,
You know, so
yeah,
it does
that's
get a bit
even more.
messy.
It gets very muddy. I still think it should come into place somehow. The rules makers in the world need to figure that out, figure out those grey areas. Let us know what you think. Are you one of the 999 or are you one of Joel's mates?
Right, so another rule of golf we would like to change refers to the number of clubs you are allowed to carry in your bag. Dan, talk us through exactly how you would change it.
Yeah, quite passionate about this one actually. I think 14 is way too many golf clubs. A, it's heavy, right? It's expensive. I think it takes a little bit of skill out of the game as well when you've got a club that does these sort of very minute things you might get out once or twice. So no one knows why it's 14 clubs, by the way. It came into effect in about the 1930s when steel shafts started getting used instead of hickories. But it's the rule now, I think it's rule 4, no more than 14 golf clubs. I would reduce it to 10. Nice round number. Let's take 4 clubs out of the bag, make it a bit lighter, make it a bit cheaper for people, bring that skill back in where you've got to, you know, finesse different kind of shots, you know,
Agreed.
half shots, 50% shots. So with that in mind, Joel, I'm going to ask you now.
Okay.
Take your 14 clubs that you probably carry at the minute. Which 4 would you get rid of if this rule came into place?
Really good question. For the record, I am totally in agreement with this.
Oh,
rule
excellent,
change.
thank you.
But yeah, in terms of the clubs I would change, yeah, I would say I could definitely do without my lob wedge.
100%.
60-degree wedge, I pretty much only use it out of bunkers, and I think I could get away with using a 54 or a 56 quite comfortably. I think I'd get rid of my 3-wood. Don't only really tend to use that on second shots into par 5s, but you know, I can use a hybrid and flick a wedge in. I think my 5-iron as well. I mean, those are 3 clubs that I think could easily be taken out. I don't think I'd see a massive drop-off in performance or scores as a result.
I agree with you on the lob wedge. I love my 3-wood, so I keep it. I'd only play odd iron, so I'd go 5, 7, 9 wedge. So I lose my 6 and my 8, my lob wedge, and then
Your 4-iron?
I don't carry a 4-iron.
Oh.
I probably would if I carried 14. Probably, realistically, one of my hybrid or 3-wood. I'd have to have a sit down with myself and really work out.
Look at your Arcos data, maybe.
Exactly. See which one's doing the same job as the other. So yeah, come on. I need your 14th. I need the 4th club out of here.
Yeah, I'd probably get rid of my one of the wedges, maybe the gap wedge.
You could get rid of the gap wedge,
Yeah.
couldn't you? Anyway, yeah, I think a great rule. We're both in agreement on this one. Let's get 14 clubs down to 10.
Right, so I'm just thankful, Dan, we found some shade.
Yes.
It's a beautiful sunny day here at Paliero Golf Course in Madeira, but I'm a bit disgruntled, Dan, because my drive off this 18th hole, it's come down the left, it's kick left,
This guy's stood there in your way.
and this guy is going to cause me a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Because the other post is sort of in line here, going back past the camera, so the ball is just out of bounds. I've found it, and as we all know, the penalty is very severe when it comes to out of bounds. I have to take stroke and distance, so walk all the way back to the tee, because I haven't hit a provisional ball, because I didn't think it was going to be out of bounds. All the way back to the tee, play 3 off the tee, so if I hit a good drive, equidistant to this one, playing 4 from the fairway.
on a par
I mean,
4,
think about it, that
is
is actually crazy, like how severe the penalty is for out of bounds. Obviously, going back to the tee slows down play a lot. You've got that walk of shame, that embarrassment factor as well. But I think a fair and reasonable penalty, in my opinion, would be if you've dropped it or you haven't found it, but you can reasonably, with some certainty, know where your ball has gone into the out of bounds. I think you should be able to drop a ball in bounds, the point that it kind of crossed the out of bounds line.
As you would do with red posts and yellow at the minute,
with a penalty shot,
yeah,
so
course,
playing your third shot, so you're obviously not, you've got a penalty, you've been disadvantaged by going out of bounds, but the penalty is not so severe. I think it's a fairer penalty.
That's a much fairer way to deal with out of bounds, I think. And while we're here on out of bounds, I think we're both in agreement. Internal out of bounds, sack it off entirely.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, can't stand it. I mean, I know there's a safety element to it, but yeah, internal out of bounds between 2 holes. You know, if you hit a wayward drive and it's sitting perfectly on the fairway, but you're randomly out of bounds, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, and I think alongside the divot one we spoke about earlier, this will be a really, really popular one with golfers back home.
Right, Dan, that was a nice round, wasn't it?
Very enjoyable, so thanks for that, Joel.
It's time to sign our scorecard.
It is.
I believe there's a rule that you might want to tweak with this regard.
I think there's a chance to change this now, and so the USGA and the RNA brought a new rule in 2023, a model local rule that meant you wouldn't get disqualified anymore for not signing the card, which I think was a good rule. Do you agree with that? I think it was always a bit harsh, isn't it, that you don't put your little squiggle down, and it's often just the sort of blind scribble anyway, isn't it? You get DQ'd. That's now a 2-shot penalty. However, it's only a model local rule, which means clubs don't have to adopt it if they don't want to. I think it should be written and entrenched in the rules now that if you don't sign for your scorecard, if you forget to put a signature on there, it's just a 2-shot penalty, which I think is penalty enough for what is really a stupid mistake that we should all be doing anyway, right?
There's something else written on the scorecard there as well.
Yeah, so at the bottom of this one here, it says, like this video and subscribe to the Golf Monthly YouTube channel for more videos like this, which I think is
a good idea.
It's pretty sound advice.
Yeah. So one rule that we want to change that I hadn't actually considered before comes down to putter design, Dan, in particular the alignment assistance you get from putters and also on golf balls as well. I think you've got quite a drastic change that you'd like to make.
Well, this is a really interesting one when we were brainstorming ideas for this video. We sat down as a group and said, what do we want to change? And Joe, our colleague, said, I think we should get rid of alignment aids on putters. And I said, well, okay, let's maybe get rid of them on balls as well. And the more I thought about it, I think the more I like it. So there's rules in place at the minute, don't know the exact ones that say you're allowed them and the height they're allowed in the club and the substance that you can use and. I would personally wipe it clean. And that's from putters, so you can see here on my Spider, which I do love and I do use this quite a lot, sort of 2 alignment aids here, right? You've got the line going down the middle and the Y that they use, the white Y. And then on golf balls like this, I mean, again, really popular, but I'm sorry, TaylorMade, Callaway, Bridgestone now, get them gone. Let's wipe it clean and bring a bit more skill back into the game, I guess. You know, not having it all lined up. You've got to know where you put a head's facing, if it's open, if it's closed. You've got to trust your alignment with the ball, stuff like that. I think it's a really interesting one, and the more I think about it, the more I'm into. Yeah,
I think if you think about other sports, you know, snooker, for example, you don't have alignment assistance from your cue. You could argue using lines on the ball or features like we've got on that TaylorMade Tour Response stripe slows play down a lot when you're trying to line it up perfectly.
You love fast play, don't you, Joe? I've noticed that.
I do love fast play. I don't like messing around too much. So getting that precisely right can take a lot of time. So yeah, there's definitely a case to make for simplifying the design of the clubs and the balls a little bit, bring more skill back into the game, and best putters would probably still come through.
Yeah, and I think it's just, look, I'm not going to align it. You knock it down nice and easy, and you just hold putts like that. You don't need the alignment aids.
You just demonstrated it.
Thank you. Let's wipe them off completely. But let us know about that one because it's a bit more of an interesting one. Okay then, Joel, next rule change, please. What have you got for us?
So we're going to talk about the teeing area, Dan. So this all comes under Rule 6.1b. It's fascinating stuff.
It's my favourite rule, that one.
As everyone knows, the teeing area relates to kind of the straight line from the front of the tee markers, 2 club lengths back, and then kind of a parallel line along here. This is your teeing area. But if you don't tee your ball up in the teeing area and play your shot, you get the general penalty, which is 2 shots.
Okay.
And you have to correct your mistake, i.e. play another ball from within the teeing area. Now, in my opinion, that is a very harsh penalty for what is in a situation where you're not really gaining a massive advantage. So, for example, if I tee the ball accidentally, say here, you know, just in front of the tee markers, I've gained a couple of inches.
It's not worth it. It's not worth the penalty,
but
right?
I'm not gaining a huge advantage by doing this, and therefore I feel like the 2-shot penalty plus correcting your mistake is very harsh. I think a 1-shot penalty, like I understand that you need to protect the game and you can't have people teeing up way in front of the markers, but in this particular situation, I think the penalty is too harsh.
Okay, I think I tend to agree with you, Joel. Where's the line though, literally? Because, you know, it's like VAR and offside, isn't it? It's like, oh, well, a toe, they shouldn't give it them, let's make that not offside. Okay, cool. How far does it go? Yeah, and you could get some person who just keeps nudging themselves
up.
I
think there's hardly anyone who would go and tee, if you're playing this way, no one would tee it up over here.
No, okay, that's fair.
People would only make the mistake, within like a 12-inch range. And I don't think you're gaining very much.
Okay.
I think so. I understand your point.
Yeah.
But my kind of main gripe is the penalty is too harsh.
Agreed, I think so. And most of the time people do this on accident, right?
Exactly. And it's worth pointing out, in match play, there's no penalty. Your playing partner can ask you to play it again, or if you've hit it into the rubbish, they can say that shot counts and that's fine. And I understand, if you're teeing up the other side of the...
Yeah, so that was my next question though. What if it's a hybrid to play for position, but you're not good with it hybrid?
Yeah.
So if you keep coming back and back and back, I can hit a driver now. Again,
you probably gain more advantage going that way than you do this way, because
so.
You can, if you're like you say, if you're in between clubs and you've got the club that's going to go too far, if you go too far back, then it becomes a perfect yardage. So I kind of understand it. So I'm okay with it this way, less okay with it this way.
Okay. Yes, I definitely understand your point. I think the rules have got to just sort of relax a bit, man. Chill out a little bit, and this would be a great way of doing it. Probably the most dramatic and drastic of the ones we've spoken about. It could change the game forever. Talk us through it.
It's a humdinger, Dan. Yeah, I think we should ban tees.
Bang, boom,
yeah. I think the privileges that are extended to golfers on the teeing area versus the rest of the golf course are excessive.
Okay.
I mean, I've got my phone, I can reel off some of the things that you can do on a tee.
In between these two
you can't
sticks
do anywhere on the golf course. So tees can be up to 4 inches long.
Yeah.
You can alter the surface of the ground. You can make indentations with your foot or the club. You can move, bend or break grass. We know you can't do that on anywhere else on the golf course.
Correct.
You can remove objects in the teeing area. You can press down sand and soil. You can remove dew, frost and water. You can do all sorts of stuff.
You've got carte blanche here to do what you want with the golf ball, right?
Exactly.
And you don't want to see that.
But placing the ball on a tee on the ground, on the teeing area on the ground, is enough to give you a good enough lie to be able to gain an advantage versus where you are on the rest of the golf course.
Yeah.
And then you've got the argument about the golf ball going too far and how the tee is pretty much directly responsible for golfers being able to launch the ball higher with less spin because they're able to attack the ball on the up because the ball is raised above the ground. Whereas if you put the ball on the ground, you would see lower ball flights with more spin, less distance. You would definitely increase the level of skill that would be required to hit the shots correctly with a lower lofted 3-wood, or even if you still want to hit a driver. I think it brings the skill back into the game. It produces less distance. It solves an awful lot of problems.
It does. Can I just pitch a couple of questions at you? I think people might be shouting at home, right? So I'm broadly on board with it. I think it's a fun idea. Would it rule out that club entirely from existence? What about golfers who struggle with their driver at the minute to get it up in the air and off the ground? Those are my main
questions. Yeah, I mean, obviously it'd be unpopular with golfers who struggle with their driver, and obviously a lot of golfers are used to playing the ball, on a tee raised up. But I think people would get used to hitting driver off these sorts of lies, and
really?
They might play a slightly higher lofted driver as a result, or a lower lofted 3-wood, like I've said. But I can demonstrate.
We see driver off the deck.
We do
anyway, don't we? I mean, that is from the more skilled players, but maybe that'll bring that element of the game back into sort of high handicaps of the world.
On teeing grounds, you can get some pretty good lies.
Because that is still now, and we'll show it you close up, sat up fairly nicely.
It's sat up pretty nicely, and I haven't hit a lot of shots today, so this could go horribly wrong, but let's give it a whirl.
Oh, Joel.
Look at that.
That is your first swing of the day.
First swing of the day, just down that right-hand side of the fairway. It's probably gone a good, 250 yards.
And that's fine, that's all you need. So that's bringing a skill back into it.
I know I'm a relatively good golfer, 3 handicapper, but and the high handicappers, they're probably going to struggle with these sort of lie. But I do think removing tees altogether and the privileges you get around preferring your lie, using your wedges to raise up the ground and that sort of thing, we see Laura Davies do, I think that needs to be banished from the game altogether.
Yeah, and wouldn't it be fascinating to watch the professionals play all these great golf courses that we can then come see back in the game again. You know, the rollback argument is we don't see some of the great old courses anymore because they're bombing it too far. Wouldn't it be great to see those golf courses back?
And it's that risk reward as well. Do you want to risk hitting a driver off the deck, off the tee, in case it goes horribly wrong?
Yeah.
But obviously you get rewarded if you hit it like that. You do still get some pretty good distance.
It's a fascinating one, Joel. I think some food for thought for you guys watching at home. I think probably a really good rule to crown off that video.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of comments, I think.
Well, let us know. Would you like to see that? I'm feeling a lot of anger because lots of golfers aren't that great and they're going to struggle with that. But I'm feeling lots of positives on the rollback perspective.
But is it a better solution than rolling back the golf ball for everybody? I would say yes.
I would say yes as well. So let us know if there's any that we've missed that you would like to see. But for now, from Madeira, thanks for joining us.